Ever notice how some buffets look like a dream until you actually taste the food? The trays of gravy, pasta, and soft serve look inviting, but one bite can tell a very different story. Still, a few buffets manage to get it right. Can you guess which ones? Let's kick things off with the buffet that once ruled family road trips, but now leaves more people groaning than grinning. Golden Corral. If you grew up in America, chances are you had at least one Sunday lunch or road trip stop at a Golden Corral. Back in the day, it felt like food heaven. Endless trays of fried chicken, mashed potatoes piled like mountains, and a chocolate fountain that seemed too good to be real. It was the kind of place where kids felt like royalty because they could pick anything they wanted, and parents loved it because everyone left stuffed. But today, Golden Corral has become the poster child for buffets that are better in memory than in reality. Walk into one now, and the first thing you might notice is the chaos. Plates clattering, kids running around, and food that looks like it has been sitting under a heat lamp longer than anyone should admit. That fried chicken, it is often lukewarm, greasy in the wrong way, and missing the crisp bite that once made it a fan favorite. The macaroni and cheese, that used to bubble with comfort, is sometimes watery, as if someone stretched it too far with milk powder. Even the desserts, which once seemed magical, can taste like they came straight from a freezer truck. What went wrong? Expansion, for one. Golden Corral tried to be everywhere, and with that growth came shortcuts. Quality slipped as they focused more on volume than care. Former employees have even admitted that much of the food comes in frozen or pre-prepared, leaving staff to simply heat and refill trays instead of cooking with heart. That sense of home-style cooking that drew families in slowly faded, replaced by the efficiency of an assembly line. Price also plays a role. Golden Corral still advertises itself as an affordable feast, but customers often feel like they are paying more and getting less. When you spend your hard-earned money, you expect food that feels like a treat, not something that tastes like it has been microwaved. The charm that once made it a family tradition has dimmed, leaving regulars feeling disappointed. That does not mean every location is terrible. Some still try to keep up standards, and you can sometimes find a fresh dish if you arrive at just the right time. But overall, Golden Corral has become the chain most people mention when they talk about buffets gone downhill. It is less about joy now and more about filling up without much flavor. Here is the question. Do you still have fond memories of Golden Corral, or has it lost the magic for you? Sliding into the list is a chain that went from endless spreads to endless closures. Old Country Buffet. For many families, Old Country Buffet was the go-to Sunday spot. Big booths, endless plates of comfort food, and that familiar smell of rolls baking in the oven. It was not fancy, but that was the charm. You could load your tray with fried chicken, stuffing, green beans, and then head back for dessert without anyone batting an eye. For a while, it really felt like the American dream of all-you-can-eat come true. But as years passed, cracks started to show. And eventually, those cracks became closures. Walk in during the later years, and you might find half-empty trays, food that looked tired, and staff struggling to keep up. The mashed potatoes that once tasted like grandma's special recipe often came from a powdered mix. The meats, once juicy and rich, sometimes turned dry and flavorless after sitting too long. Even the dessert bar, once a highlight with pies and soft serve, started to feel like an afterthought. The decline was not just about food quality, but about the entire experience. Service slowed, dining rooms felt less cared for, and the once bustling atmosphere turned gloomy. Customers started noticing and stopped returning. Add in competition from newer restaurants and the rise of casual dining chains, and Old Country Buffet found itself left behind. Eventually, many locations shut down, leaving empty buildings where family memories once lived. The saddest part is how quickly the fall happened. One day, it seemed like Old Country Buffet was everywhere. The next, it was disappearing from cities across America. For many people, it was like losing a piece of their childhood. The spot where birthday dinners, after-church lunches, or casual family nights once took place. Nostalgia is strong, but nostalgia alone cannot keep doors open when food and service no longer match the memory. Some loyal customers still defend it, saying it was affordable and filled you up. That is true. It was often cheaper than other family dinners, and if quantity was your only goal, it delivered. But in the end, people wanted more than just full stomachs. They wanted meals that felt cared for, food worth remembering. An Old Country buffet just could not keep up. So here is the fun one. Did you ever eat so much at Old Country buffet that you swore you would never eat again? Coming up is the spot your grandma may have sworn by, but these days it is more wilted than welcoming. Hometown buffet. Hometown buffet built its reputation as the friendly neighborhood buffet. It was the kind of place where families would gather after church, where seniors enjoyed a discounted night out, and where kids could load their plates with macaroni and pizza all in one trip. For many, it felt like a safe and familiar choice. But safe and familiar eventually turned into stale and unappealing. One of the biggest complaints over the years was about freshness. People would walk in and find salad bars with limp lettuce, fried chicken that looked tired, and side dishes that tasted like they had been reheated again and again. The once inviting spread started to resemble a cafeteria line instead of a treat. Customers noticed, and word spread quickly. The decline was also about atmosphere. Hometown buffet was once buzzing with life. Families laughing, kids running around with soft-serve cones in hand. But as time went on, that energy disappeared. Dining rooms looked emptier, and the food did not bring the same excitement. It is hard to enjoy a buffet when it feels like you are eating leftovers that never got put away. Like Old Country buffet, Hometown buffet struggled with rising costs and growing competition. Newer chains offered fresher options, and sit-down restaurants started providing meals at prices not much higher than a buffet ticket. Suddenly, what used to feel like a bargain felt like a waste. The nostalgia is still there, though. Ask people about Hometown buffet, and many will recall birthdays or family dinners. Some even joke that it was the place where kids learned how to balance 3 plates at once. But those memories cannot hide the truth. The chain fell behind, and most locations are now closed. What remains is a faded memory of what once was a community staple. It is almost bittersweet. You remember the joy of piling a plate high, but you also remember the times you left thinking, that just was not worth it. So here is my question for you. Was Hometown buffet ever your family's Sunday spot? Or did you skip it for something better? Now here's a buffet that fell from Southern favorite to Southern letdown, Ryan's Buffet. For years, Ryan's Buffet was a big name across the South and Midwest. People loved it for its hearty, comfort-style dishes, fried chicken that made you think of Sunday suppers, cornbread that felt homemade, and roast beef that was once the star of the table. Families lined up for that home cooking taste, all you could eat at a price that felt like a steal. But the shine faded, and Ryan's slowly became another cautionary tale in buffet history. The problems were similar to its competitors. Food quality dipped, service slipped, and the whole experience felt tired. Walk into one of the later Ryan's locations, and you might have seen trays half full, chicken that was more grease than crunch, and vegetables so overcooked they barely resembled what they started as. The buffet, once celebrated for Southern comfort food, turned into a place people avoided. Another issue was how corporate ownership handled the brand. As larger companies took over, menus were streamlined, and the focus shifted from quality to quantity. That special touch, the sense that you were getting hearty meals made with care, all but disappeared. Customers who once praised the chain for family-friendly comfort began calling it bland and forgettable.
It is sad because Ryan's had carved out a niche. For many families, it was the go-to for affordable Southern-style food in big portions. But once the quality went downhill, that loyalty vanished fast.
Word of mouth, once their biggest strength, became their downfall, as people started warning friends away instead of recommending it. Today, Ryan's buffets are mostly gone, and the few that remain feel more like echoes of the past than thriving restaurants. People who grew up with it often share memories of family meals, but they also admit the later years were nothing like the glory days.
It is one of those classic buffet stories, success built on comfort and quantity, undone by cutting corners and losing what made it special.
So tell me, do you remember Ryan's Buffet at its best, or only the disappointing version that came later? Taking a stage is a steakhouse that made big promises but served even bigger letdowns. Sizzler. Back in its heyday, Sizzler felt like the place where you could get the best of both worlds. Steak on one side, buffet on the other. It was marketed as affordable indulgence, the spot where you could cut into a juicy sirloin and then head straight for endless salad, pasta, and dessert. For families on a budget, it sounded like the perfect night out. But the reality, especially in later years, often looked very different. The steaks, once advertised as sizzling and savory, too often came out tough, overcooked, or lacking the rich flavor people expected. And the buffet, instead of being a highlight, it became more of an afterthought. The salad bar, once a point of pride, slowly shrank into a line of limp lettuce, bland dressings, and toppings that felt like they had been scooped out of a bulk bin. Pasta sat clumped together, sauces tasted canned, and the dessert table, meant to be a sweet ending, rarely lived up to its colorful display. Sizzler's decline was not just about food, though. It was also about identity. Was it a steakhouse? Was it a buffet? It never fully committed to either, and customers noticed. While competitors focused on making their buffets exciting or their steaks high quality, Sizzler stayed stuck in the middle, and mediocrity rarely wins in the restaurant world. Add in corporate cost-cutting, and the quality kept slipping. Employees have shared stories of frozen meats, prepackaged items, and less focus on cooking fresh in-house. That sizzle that gave the chain its name became more of a marketing memory than a reality. Families who once looked forward to a Sizzler night out began looking elsewhere, and slowly the chain lost its shine. Today, Sizzler still exists in some areas, but it is no longer the household name it once was. Instead of being a top pick, it has become a nostalgic story, the place you maybe remember going as a kid, but not somewhere you would rush to today. So here is the fun one. Do you remember the salad bar at Sizzler being a treat, or was it always a letdown in disguise? Next on the chopping block is a cowboy-themed spot where the steak dreams too often end in disappointment. Sirloin Stockade. When Sirloin Stockade first opened, the idea was clever. Bring the spirit of the American West to the buffet table. Big steaks, hearty sides, and plenty of food for the whole family at a price that felt fair. For small towns across the Midwest and South, it was a welcome addition, a mix of steakhouse pride and buffet variety. But over the years, the brand's cowboy charm wore thin. The biggest issue was consistency. One visit, you might get a steak cooked just right, juicy and flavorful. The next, you would be served a tough cut so dry it could pass as shoe leather. Buffets are supposed to make up for that kind of gamble with variety, but the sides often left much to be desired. Green beans cooked until they lost all texture, potatoes that tasted boxed, and gravies that leaned heavily on salt instead of real flavor. What really hurt Sirloin Stockade, though, was how little it adapted. As newer buffet chains introduced fresher options or global flavors, Sirloin Stockade stayed stuck in the past. It was meat, potatoes, and a few basics. Comforting at first, but boring in the long run. Families wanted something exciting, something to look forward to, and Sirloin Stockade never quite evolved. Atmosphere also played a role. The cowboy theme, once a fun novelty, began to feel dated. Dining rooms that should have felt warm and rustic instead started looking worn down. Customers picked up on that, and once the sense of fun faded, all that was left was average food in an outdated setting. Despite all of this, some loyal fans kept returning, mostly for nostalgia or convenience. But loyalty only goes so far when your competition is offering fresher, better meals at similar prices. Eventually, many Sirloin Stockade locations closed, leaving behind empty buildings and memories of a once proud chain. So here's the question. If you tried Sirloin Stockade, did you go for the steaks or just to fill up on the side? Rolling in with more smoke than sizzle is the flame-branded chain that just cannot live up to its name, Western Sizzlin'. This chain marketed itself on the promise of its famous flame-kissed steaks, cooked over high heat for extra flavor. The name alone made it sound bold and exciting, the kind of steakhouse buffet hybrid where you could get a real meal at a good price. But the reality was often a letdown. Instead of flame-kissed magic, too many customers got steaks that were dry, bland, or cooked without care. And when the steaks are disappointing at a place that puts steak in its very name, everything else starts to crumble. The buffet section, which should have been a saving grace, was rarely better. Customers complained of fried foods that were greasy instead of crispy, vegetables that were soggy, and bread that tasted more like cardboard than fresh rolls. Desserts were basic, often straight from the freezer aisle, and the whole spread felt like it was trying to stretch ingredients as far as possible. The biggest problem was expectations. The name Western Sizzlin' painted a picture of big, bold flavor, but what arrived on your plate often told another story. You can forgive a buffet for being average if it is cheap and honest about it, but when you promise a flame-grilled steak experience and deliver something lifeless, people notice, and they do not come back. Corporate management did not help matters either. As ownership changed hands and cost-cutting grew, the focus shifted from delivering quality to just keeping the lights on. That cowboy Western pride that once gave the chain its identity slowly faded, leaving behind just another generic buffet. To be fair, there are still pockets of loyal fans, especially in smaller towns where dining options are limited. For them, Western sizzling was part of community life. But when compared to the buffet giants or fresher options available today, it feels like a relic. So here's a thought. When you hear flame-kissed steak, do you imagine sizzling flavor, or do you picture a dried-out cut under a heat lamp? All-you-can-eat pizza sounds like a dream, but this one tastes more like a dare. Cece's Pizza Buffet. For kids, Cece's felt like heaven. Endless rows of pizza, pasta, breadsticks, and even cinnamon rolls for dessert. It was cheap enough for parents to say yes, and fun enough for kids to make memories. But while the idea sounded amazing, the actual pizza often told another story. The crusts were thin and bland, the cheese tasted more like plastic than mozzarella, and the toppings were so sparse you sometimes had to squint to see them. Instead of bubbling, cheesy pies pulled fresh from the oven, what you got was often lukewarm slices that had been sitting under heat lamps. And because it was all you can eat, quality never seemed to be the focus. It was quantity over everything else. Cece's tried to make up for it with variety. Taco pizza, mac and cheese pizza, even dessert pizzas with frosting and sprinkles. They looked fun, but most of them were more novelty than flavor. Kids may have loved the wacky toppings, but adults quickly realized it was more gimmick than gourmet. The atmosphere did not help either. Dining rooms were loud, chaotic, and often messy, with trays being swapped in and out as quickly as possible. The price made it clear why. You could feed a whole family for the cost of a single sit-down meal somewhere else. But affordability only goes so far when you leave wishing the food tasted better. That said, Cece's still has its fans, mostly because it fills a specific niche. It is cheap, fast, and plentiful, and sometimes that is exactly what people want. But for anyone expecting quality pizza, it is often a harsh reality check. So here's my question. Would you ever choose unlimited, low-quality pizza over one really good slice? Or is one enough for you? Once billed as steakhouse royalty, today it is more frozen sides than fresh flavor. Ponderosa Steakhouse. Ponderosa was once one of those names that people said with a smile, a place where you could order a steak dinner and also wander over to the buffet for a second round of sides and desserts. Families loved the idea that you could get both, a full steakhouse experience and endless choices, all for one price. It sounded like a winning formula, and for a while, it was. But as the years went by, that royal crown started to slip. The steaks, which should have been the highlight, too often came out bland or overcooked. Instead of sizzling cuts cooked with care, customers were served meat that felt more like it came out of a freezer than a butcher shop. The buffet, meant to be the supporting star, did not fare much better. Mashed potatoes tasted powdered, vegetables were overcooked until mushy, and rolls felt like they had been baked days earlier. It was food that filled the stomach, but not food you were excited to eat. Another issue was presentation. Buffets live and die by how fresh and inviting the spread looks. At Ponderosa, it often looked like the food had been sitting there for too long. Trays with crusted edges, gravy thickened into glue, and desserts that looked more like cafeteria leftovers than indulgent treats. The sight alone could take away your appetite. The chain also struggled with staying relevant. While other buffets experimented with fresher options, international flavors, or creative menus, Ponderosa stayed the same. What once felt like dependable comfort food began to feel outdated. Customers moved on, and locations began to close, leaving behind memories of what used to be a staple. There are still a few Ponderosa steakhouses left, but they are a shadow of what the brand once was. People who remember it fondly talk about family dinners and birthday celebrations, but they also admit the food was never as good as they hoped. It is nostalgia that keeps its name alive, more than quality on the plate. So here is the question. Did you ever leave Ponderosa feeling satisfied, or did it always feel like a buffet trying too hard to be a steakhouse? And here is the healthy choice that somehow managed to make even salads feel sad. Soup Plantation, also known as sweet tomatoes. At first, this chain felt like a breath of fresh air. While most buffets piled on fried foods and heavy meats, Soup Plantation offered rows of fresh salads, soups, and lighter options. It seemed perfect for people who wanted variety without all the grease. For years, it attracted families who liked the idea of a healthier buffet. But even with the best intentions, the experience often missed the mark. The salads looked bright and colorful at first glance, but many customers quickly noticed the ingredients were not always fresh. Lettuce that had gone limp, toppings that felt recycled, and dressings that leaned heavily on sugar and preservatives. Soups, which should have been the comforting heart of the buffet, were often watered down or too salty. Even the bread and muffins, meant to be a highlight, sometimes tasted like they came straight from a mix. The idea was good, but execution was inconsistent. When you market yourself as the healthy choice, people expect freshness and flavor. Too often, Soup Plantation felt more like a cafeteria line than a restaurant. And while it had loyal fans, especially in states like California and Florida, the reputation started to falter. Then came another challenge: cost. Healthier buffets are not cheap to run, and prices went up. Customers began asking themselves if it was worth it when other restaurants offered fresher, made-to-order meals at similar prices. By the time closures started rolling out, many people admitted they were not surprised. The charm had worn off. Still, nostalgia runs deep. Some people remember Soup Plantation fondly as the place where they could pile on a little of everything and feel good about it. For kids, the dessert section was always a highlight, even if the soft serve was nothing special. It had its moment in buffet history, but in the end, it just could not hold on. So here is my question. Do you think a healthy buffet can really work, or are buffets always meant to be indulgent? On the brighter side, few things still feel as hearty and southern as grabbing a plate from Shoney's Fresh Food Bar. Unlike many buffet chains that have lost their way, Shoney's has managed to hang on by staying true to its roots. The Fresh Food Bar may not be flashy, but it delivers what people expect: hearty breakfasts, comfort-style lunches, and reliable favorites that remind you of home cooking. It is not trying to reinvent the buffet. It is trying to keep it familiar. And that is exactly why so many loyal customers keep coming back. Breakfast is often the star here. Picture walking in and seeing trays of scrambled eggs, bacon cooked just right, biscuits with sausage gravy, and pancakes stacked high. For many families, that kind of spread is enough to start the day with a smile. Lunch and dinner offerings follow the same pattern: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh salads, and desserts that actually taste homemade. It is simple food done the way people remember it. And that familiarity is its biggest strength. What sets Shoney's apart is that it has never tried too hard to be something it is not. While other buffets chased gimmicks or overloaded their menus, Shoney's kept things steady. That consistency, paired with a sense of nostalgia, makes it stand out. Seniors especially love it because the food feels like it could have come from their own kitchens. That is not to say it is perfect. Some locations vary in quality, and not every dish will blow you away. But compared to the decline of so many other buffet chains, Shoney's feels like a safe bet. It is less about surprise and more about comfort, and for a lot of people, that is exactly what a buffet should be. So here's the question. Do you think the secret to a good buffet is variety, or is it sticking to simple comfort food done right? And finally, let's celebrate a Midwest staple where crispy chicken and dessert pizza still draw crowds: Pizza Ranch Buffet. Pizza Ranch is proof that buffets can still get it right when they focus on a few things and do them well. In towns across the Midwest, it has become more than just a place to eat. It is part of community life. Families gather for their famous fried chicken, piles of pizza, and that one-of-a-kind dessert pizza that keeps people coming back. It feels like more than a buffet. It feels like tradition. The pizza here is not about gimmicks. It is simple, satisfying, and consistent. You will find pepperoni, sausage, veggie, and specialty pies that taste freshly made instead of mass-produced. The fried chicken is often praised as some of the best you can get at a buffet: crispy on the outside, juicy on the inside, and seasoned just right. Add in side dishes like mashed potatoes, coleslaw, and green beans, and it feels like a real meal, not just filler food. But the real crown jewel is the dessert pizza. Warm crust topped with cinnamon sugar, drizzled with icing. It is sweet, simple, and instantly nostalgic. For kids, it is a highlight. For adults, it is a reminder of the kind of desserts you grew up with. Unlike other buffets that try to wow with size or novelty, Pizza Ranch focuses on comfort flavors that never go out of style. The atmosphere also helps. Pizza Ranch locations often feel like community gathering spots, with churches, schools, and families using them as places to celebrate or simply share a meal. It is affordable, reliable, and built around hospitality. In a world where so many buffet chains have stumbled, Pizza Ranch stands tall by doing the basics well. So here is my question. If you had to choose between endless pizza or endless fried chicken, which one would you pile your plate with first at Pizza Ranch? And that wraps up our buffet journey. Now I want to hear your stories down in the comments. Give this video a like if it brought back a memory, good or bad, and subscribe to the hidden menu so you never miss the next plate we uncover.
And remember, the truth is not always on the menu.